Rather lads, welcome back to Cossy Podcast. My name is Cossy. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in all parts of the world. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a brand new video. Now, this is one of the highly requested videos on this channel. Will Thomas Partey and Declan Rice be in the same team at Arsenal next season? Now, it is highly likely now that Thomas Partey will stay at the club. It is also highly likely that Declan Rice will be in that midfield because he has done his medicals and Arsenal are going to announce him as a new signing. The big question for me in the comment section below is, would you love to see Partey and Declan Rice play together, or you feel that is too defensive for Arsenal? Do you feel Rice, because he's got that ability to play where Partey plays and where Xhaka plays at the same time, we should play Rice alone and two attacking midfielders? Now, of course, my opinions and my thoughts about attacking midfielders and defensive midfielders have always been very, very clear. I hate a pragmatic approach. I love attacking football. I love free-flowing football. But Partey is one I like, and Declan Rice is a player that I think Arsenal desperately need. So therefore, I have got to think about ways we could play Partey and Declan Rice together. Now, this is a disclaimer for me. One, I don't think we will play Partey and Declan Rice every single week in the Premier League. I think in most cases it will be either Partey or Declan Rice. And of course, because Declan Rice has signed for 105 million, it's going to predominantly be Declan Rice over Thomas Partey. But there are games where I think Mikel Arteta will want to go conventional for a conventional pivot. There are games where we will have to switch to two defensive midfielders, especially at the Etihad, especially against Manchester United, especially against clubs like Liverpool, clubs that are a mile probably ahead of us. I'm not saying Man United is ahead of us. I'm saying City and Liverpool are ahead of us. Even last season when we were very good, we didn't actually beat Liverpool at the Anfield. So maybe that is one of the scenarios where I could see Partey and Declan Rice play in the same midfield. So in this video, we're going to be exploring ways in which these two players can actually play together and when, probably as well. So hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast as well, and let's get those likes through the roof. Now, first and foremost, I've looked at two ways that Partey and Declan Rice will line up at Arsenal. The first one is in the 4-3-3 formation that Mikel Arteta is actually driving towards, every single season. So Thomas Partey retains his defensive midfield role, but then Declan Rice becomes the Xhaka. So this is what we played. This is how we've been lining up, or this is how we have actually been setting up most of the time. We've been trying to play we've been trying to play a box midfield, Rice or Xhaka in that position, going a little bit further forward, and Thomas Partey staying as the anchorman of the midfield. There's so many advantages to this one, and one of the things is that Thomas Partey has something that Declan Rice for me does not have, and that is the ability to keep things ticking. Now, when it comes to the defensive part of the game, Rice is a much better player than Thomas Partey, but much better in interceptions, much better in tackles, much better in blocks as well. So if you wanted a strong defensive midfielder that is very dynamic, I think it's a no-brainer. Declan Rice is the guy. But if you wanted a box-to-box who is again dynamic, good at winning the ball back, elite ball winner, that is Declan Rice still. So I think with Thomas Partey, the only advantage that Partey retains over Declan Rice is that ability to sit in that midfield, especially when we are in possession, and keep things ticking. He will always shift over to the left-hand side where you have Saka and Martin Odegaard, and again, he always shifts over to the right-hand side where you have did I just switch that? To the left where there is Xhaka and Martinelli, and to the right where there is Odegaard and Saka. So he's that kind of guy. He always provides that additional numerical superiority in different contexts and different scenarios, and that's one of the things why he's very key to our game. He progresses play. Rice can do that, but one thing that I've seen Partey do, and the only other player that actually does that in the Premier League has been Rodri, is that ability to, always shift with the shift of the ball. When the ball is on the right-hand side, he will be on the right-hand side with Odegaard, Saka, creating that extra man to provide, to create, passing triangles. On the left as well, Partey always drops to the left to create passing triangles with Xhaka, Martinelli, and of course, Alexander Zinchenko. So that is the first way we could line up with both of them. Like, Rice comes in as a direct replacement for Granit Xhaka, right? The second one, which would actually be the conventional pivot, and this one, in my opinion, is going to be very, very key, especially in times when we play a team that is as good in the midfield as us, or even better. So we've seen at times that we've played in a 4-2-3-1 system, and it's a little bit conventional, of course. It's not one of those systems that you will, fancy. It's not a fancy, setup, but it's one of those that actually helps a lot. So in a double midfield pivot, in a conventional midfield pivot, what would definitely happen is that we would have Rice sitting in as a DM, and we have Partey sitting in as a DM. This could actually help us in games that we want to see through. For example, the Liverpool game, where we led 2-0 and eventually lost the game. I think Declan Rice and Thomas Partey could sit together in that pivot just to make the midfield a little bit stronger. It is also the same thing when we played West Ham away in a game that we led 2-0 and eventually it ended 2-2. It is also another very, very good example of a game. Like, that is one of the scenarios where we would play in a double pivot just to make sure. I mean, you could start with a single pivot, maybe Rice, maybe Partey, but then as the game progresses, as Arsenal lose the grip in midfield, as Arsenal lose grip and control of the game, then we definitely go for one of the two. We either go for Thomas Partey, to come on, or play both of them together. It's something that we tried to do last campaign with Jorginho and Partey playing in the same team. Of course, it has its own problems. It does affect the way you attack. And that's why I think if you're going to play a conventional pivot with Rice and Partey, it's going to be one in a game where, you have, the opponent is very good in midfield. I think Liverpool last season did do it to us. They pressed us a lot. They were much better at the Anfield, so we needed an extra body there. We needed extra cover in midfield. There are times when Partey needs extra cover. So Partey has one thing over Rice. He keeps things ticking. Now, on the tactics board, and one of the things I wanted to illustrate in this one, on the tactics board, is how Declan Rice replaces Xhaka and Partey at the same time, and how Arsenal would benefit from playing Rice and Rice and Partey occasionally. So the reason as to why we've signed Declan Rice is actually very easy. This is where we've had Xhaka and Partey play together. Xhaka has been more of our box-to-box midfielder, and Thomas Partey has been the defensive midfielder in that instance. But of course, Mikel Arteta doesn't want that. Mikel Arteta prefers to have at least one player that can do both roles. That allows you to have another attacking player in the midfield. Hence, signing Kai Havertz and also the likes of Fabio Vieira, the likes of Emile Smith-Rowe could actually be getting their game time. With Emile Smith-Rowe having a very, very good time with the England under-23s in the Euros, I think he will want to continue that good form. He will want to continue that good spell. Come the start of next season. So with Rice now in the midfield, with Rice into the midfield, it means that you can easily get rid of Thomas Partey out of the lineup. That is the first thing we can think of. Odegaard then occupies this space here, and then you have a player like Kai Havertz coming there to occupy that space there. Hence, Arsenal attacking with almost 5 attackers, right? And of course, I'm saying 5 attackers because Alexander Zinchenko inverts into the midfield, and you have Julian Timber inverting into midfield as well. So 5 attackers and 3 defensive players that will help you when it comes to dealing with counter attacks. But how about Partey and Declan Rice? How do the two actually fit in together in the same team in the same lineup? Now, the first thing is easy. We've talked about that conventional pivot. We have Rice and Partey sitting in the same pivot. Rice becoming your natural box-to-box. Now, of course, if we compare Rice to Xhaka and Partey in terms of ball progression, he's a much better box-to-box player. Actually, Rice beats Xhaka and Partey to every metric apart from assists. Xhaka only beats Rice in the number of assists, that is creating per season, but apart from that, Rice is a much better player. So literally that means that Partey would be the single pivot when we are in possession. Rice would help us go in the box to box, do the box to box role, carry that ball into these final areas to Gabriel Martinelli, to Gabriel Jesus, to Martin Odegaard, and to Bukayo Saka as well. So that is the first thing Rice would actually give us. He would replace Xhaka, but in a very different way. He would actually replace Xhaka in a much more kind of defensive way rather than attacking way. But of course, what that does is that if Rice comes into this position, he would then unleash the powers of Alexander Zinchenko. Zinchenko is a much better player going forward. We saw that in the Everton game in the second leg at the Emirates Stadium when he played right down here on the right-hand side, releasing. I just need these pointers. I just thought I wouldn't need them, but I really do need them. Right, so we'll pick one. Okay, so we saw that when he released Bukayo Saka. Saka was standing right here, for the first goal. And Alexander Zinchenko just passed that ball into him, and Saka making a good run, rifled the ball into the back of the net. So of course, because Alexander Zinchenko is such a very good attacking force, because he's such a very good player in the final third, Rice is a much better defensive player, so he would be sitting in this position, and then it means Alexander Zinchenko would be able to join the attack as much and free as he can. Why? Because it means that then Partey and Declan Rice would be the two players to actually form the midfield pivot, not the way it has been with Alexander Zinchenko coming here to form the midfield double with Thomas Partey. So that's the first thing that it would actually unleash. You'd have Alexander Zinchenko going a little bit, further up front, because Rice, of course, as a player, he's got that ability to run back very, very quickly. If there is a counter-attack, he will run back and cover for Alexander Zinchenko. But then also, he's also one of the best elite football winners in the Premier League. We are talking about a player who was actually who managed 63 interceptions last campaign. His positioning is elite, and I think is one of the best in terms of recovering and positioning. So that is the first thing we get with Declan Rice and Thomas Partey. One, you have them from that pivot, Rice about here, and that allows you to go with as many attacking players as we can. Of course, with the arrival of Julian Timber, it means that Partey will be very, very secure. Partey around here, Timber around here, and Declan Rice around here as well. So we could play them in such a system. Defensively, why this has a lot of advantages is there are games where we will be pressed. There are games where we'll be the opposition will be much better. For example, at the Etihad Stadium, I think Manchester City are always much better, and you have to do a lot of defensive work. So what you have here is Thomas Partey dropping in as a centre back to form a back five, and Declan Rice coming in to sit just in front of the back five. Okay, now this is very primitive and this is very pragmatic, but there are times when you need to be pragmatic. There are times when you need to just win. For me, right? For example, against Liverpool at the Anfield, just win the game. Against West Ham at the away last season, just win the game. As simple as that. You're leading 2-0. Just win the game. Against Southampton in the second leg and the first leg, just win the game, right? So there are times when you just need to win. Ugly or beautiful, you just need to win, and that is where I think Declan Rice and Thomas Partey come together. So because Thomas Partey, has the allowance to drop into that back five, Declan Rice, together with the likes of Martin Odegaard and the likes of Gabriel Martinelli, can actually form that first line, second line of attack. Gabriel Jesus, of course, forms the first line of attack in terms of his pressing, and Saka remains as our highest, player on the pitch, so that when we want to, advance out, when we want to go out, he is the player we actually turn to. So that is pretty good. That is one of the ways we can actually utilize Partey and Rice in the same lineup. The other way we can utilize them is is playing Partey at right back. Now we've seen this already this season, but it actually worries me that if we were going to play Partey there, then we have signed Julian Timber. So the days of Thomas Partey playing at right back might actually be numbered. But of course, we could do it. We could play Thomas Partey here and Declan Rice in a midfield 3, obviously, or midfield 2 with with Odegaard with Odegaard with Odegaard, and that means definitely that we can play an extra player in midfield, right? So, for example, we could play Kai Havertz, right? We could play Kai Havertz to play a 4-3-3 kind of system. So, what this really does is that because we have Thomas Partey around here, and he's such a very good defensive midfielder, and he's a midfielder. These players in Saka, Jesus, and Gabriel Martinelli will push forward. Odegaard will push forward as well, and Saka and Rice will also push forward. Kai Havertz will join the attack, and Thomas Partey will shift from this right back situation into the middle of the pack. We saw this. We saw him play in that role against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the last game of the last campaign, and you also saw him play in that role against Nottingham Forest, a game that we actually lost. Okay, so if Partey can adapt to that, we are more likely to see him start out at right back and then shift into midfield. That means that whenever we are under threat, whenever we are under attack, Thomas Partey can cover at this role, and Declan Rice can come and drop into that defensive midfield role. Now, the problem with this one is very clear. Since last season, it doesn't really seem like Mikel Arteta and Thomas Partey do have an agreement on that role. Thomas Partey didn't actually fare very well when it comes to wide forwards attacking him, and is also one of a player that is very, very conventional and very comfortable playing in that midfield DM role. So I think we can play them, both of them together, but we are less likely to see them play together. I don't think they actually make us stronger going forward, but I think they make us much stronger defensively. So it's going to depend on a few games where Mikel will go, probably we need to win the midfield battle, and I will use Partey and Rice. But if it is not a necessity, I see Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard dominating the minutes in midfield for Arsenal next campaign.